Guys.
All right, I'm going to call the Community Center Exploration Committee meeting to order for Thursday, May 18th. It is 8:02 p.m. and we have 5 out of our 7 members, voting members at least, present. I do expect Janet, I know Jen had a conflict tonight, and asked that we proceed without her. First item of business is approval of meeting minutes from May 1st, 2023. Were there any comments for Nikki other than thanking her for doing them?
This is little, but I'm listed at the end as voting to adjourn. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't.
I just didn't think I was a voting member.
Janet's in attendees now, Jason.
I moved her. I don't know. Yeah, there she goes. Nikki, I had 2 very minor items. I don't think Bill was present, so we just have to note who was absent. So we just need to put that in the heading. It's clear, like, as you look at the motions, who was there, but we just have to do that from an open meeting law perspective. And then my other comment was under the NERI Building Committee update. It said project voted into feasibility phase. I would propose we add the words by the MSBA.
Okay.
Hi, Janet.
Hi.
We started with the minutes in the interest of time.
Yeah, I'm doing minutes tonight, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can just watch
No
the
objection.
film.
Yeah. And we're talking about the minutes from May 1st as well, right
Yes, right.
now.
Thank you, Janet, for doing the minutes this week.
Okay.
Did anyone else have comments for Nikki? All right, then I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes with the minor edits that were discussed in this meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote. Susan?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Janet?
Yep.
And I am a yes as well. So that passes unanimously. On the NERI Building Committee update, it's moving along. There will be a request for services going out to hire a owner's project manager in the next 2 weeks. So we hope to have a firm selected by the end of June. Then we have to go through a negotiation, and then we have to get MSBA's I'll call it blessing of who we select. But moving forward, it went from 0 to 100 very quickly, is how I would put it. Any questions on that? Okay. I'm not aware of any public. Go ahead, Susan.
Actually, sorry, I did have a quick question
Yeah, sure.
on that. I was curious if if there were any new members on it. I know you were looking specifically for like engineers and architects to join that team. I was just curious if anyone had.
I'm aware of one very qualified individual that has stepped forward. The select board has
Oh.
not appointed that person yet. The school committee, because of the recent election, did appoint Roger Challen as their representative, which I think is an awesome addition as well. As he put it, he doesn't think he's going to be able to fill Katura's shoes, but he's a very welcome addition to our crew. So there will be, if the person that has submitted their interest, there will still be at least 2 openings on that committee. Come June 30th, we'll actually be full once the select board meets next week, assuming they appoint the individual.
Great. Good to hear.
But if you know anyone, certainly send them along. I'm not aware of any public feedback that's been received, but if anyone else has, Janet.
Yeah, I moderated the candidates night 2 weeks ago. And in questions to the select board candidates, people started talking about having a new senior center and not moving to Woodward. They got all caught up in the whole move to Woodward thing. So, it was just spiraling down. So I stepped in and said, okay, I'm actually on the committee. We seem to have moved past the Woodward question and have gone on to other options. So they dropped it from that point, but afterwards, I had a line of people coming up to make all sorts of suggestions and make their desires known. Bill, I know what you're dealing with now. Everyone has a completely different opinion. And most people want a standalone facility. They don't want to share anything. They want to be able to have the gym whenever they want the gym. But we also talked about, it's a growing portion of the population, and other people are talking about tax relief. So, how do these things combine? But there was a very strong thing for why can't we have our own standalone new facility? Northborough has one, Hopkinton has one. And I tried to bring up Finn and its advantages, and they were underwhelmed, might be the best way to put it. So, for what it's worth, after that, I walked away thinking maybe people aren't going to be satisfied with the results of our committee unless we do take that on as a thing to look at. Like, how much would it cost? What funding would be available? And, we want people to be satisfied that we've done a complete job. And I have a feeling that unless we pursue that as an alternative, people won't be satisfied with what we've done.
And I think it's adequately covered in the proposal. We can discuss that when we get to it. But I think that's certainly an option that's very clearly stated in the proposal, standalone senior center.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're trying to inform people kind of that everything is being looked at, and that's what's happening now. That yes, that is an option that is on the top of the priority list, but yeah, sometimes that information gets to people that are really vocal that don't always hear what we're saying. So I think that was part of that. So we're working on it. We're aware of it. We're working on it.
Okay. Any other feedback? Thank you for sharing that, Janet. All right, so let's move on to the main reason we're meeting. The proposal that I circulated from DRA. So I think in our last meeting, we talked about the timing, and I think the minutes clearly, captured that we were comfortable with the timing, that this would be a summer project for DRA. They're not going to start immediately upon approval. If the committee accepts the proposal and votes it forward, the anticipated funding for it is going to be a special article that we had at the 2021 special town meeting. That was brought forward by the Capital Planning Committee. And we agreed at the time, because, whenever you say you're just going to do a study, people are skeptical. So we agreed at the time that not only would capital planning meet to discuss it, and I think really it's this committee now, because obviously this committee didn't exist then, but that we would advance it to the select board for them to discuss it. I expect it to be a consent agenda item unless someone holds it. But that would be the next step if we move forward here tonight. I feel an obligation to inform you that the number was at least 25% higher than the number you see on the piece of paper when I originally got it. So this number is this is a negotiated number. This is not a first number that was received sort of thing. Obviously we can't have negotiations on public meetings because kind of mutes the purpose of negotiation. So I think what I'm looking to understand tonight is, and ultimately get a vote on it, is the committee comfortable with what the consultant is going to do over the summer and deliver to us early fall? And are you comfortable with the price and willing to take a motion to advance it to the select board for a vote? That's really what's on the table. So I'll open up to questions.
How much money did you have available?
That particular article magically was $30,000.
That's helpful.
There is a other article that was how we paid for it last time, the space needs study. There's some funding left in that. I'd prefer not to touch that. So that's why I obviously got it down to a number that could fall within one article as opposed to having to cross two articles. That would basically use that entire article. Tim F.
In number one, I know we were going back and forth about this the last time, and the library is going to have this study anyway, but that timing didn't really align with the timing of this now. So I really would like to see a library high level costs as part of number one.
But isn't that, Ryan, keep me honest, isn't that what you're going to have to do anyways with the Mass Library Board construction project? And that's the funding you would seek next year at town meeting?
The funding we're gonna seek for next year is gonna be for the planning and design. The planning and design is gonna be a direct result of doing needs assessment on what the community wants to see at the library. So I can't answer Tim's question now because the needs assessment and then the ultimate planning and design is going to directly influence what the cost of the new library is.
Yeah, so I guess my point here is Ryan's work is probably a year and a half before we have a number returned. And, or at least that's my read of the situation, if I have it understood correctly. So we are going to be in a vacuum to some large degree for a year and a half while we guess at what that number is going to come back at. So I'd prefer to have a number, at least some working number up front. And then after Ryan's efforts, he'll have a much more refined number in a future date. But at least we're not working against literally thin air.
So are you, I just want to understand, because there may be a way to get to this without jeopardizing what Ryan's looking to do. Are you looking to understand the library at Finn in number one? Or whatever let's just say the library needed 20,000 square feet as a hypothetical example, how the library gets to 20,000 square feet to meet their programming needs?
I mean, if I'm reading this correctly, number one is just the senior center high level cost is a senior center by itself, right? That's not within Finn.
That is correct.
Yeah, so I just want a high level cost of what would a brand new library cost to build from the ground up. Let's say, you know, the library site's not available and we are just going to magically get a piece of land and build the 20,000 square foot library. So I don't think that would, I'm hoping it wouldn't derail anything Ryan's already working on, because I wouldn't want to put that into the position there. But I also don't want to have conversations for the next chunk of 8 months plus time about what this thing might theoretically cost versus having at least a ballpark to go off of.
Do you want them to assume that the library site is not available to do any sort of renovation and that library would have to find a new site independent of Finn, very much like what seniors have potentially proposed?
Yes, that's the most fair way to have a number, to just kind of know what it would cost for a new build someplace else.
I mean, what will then dominate the conversation is not the value of what we're looking to do by getting community input. It's going to be on the price versus the price. So, I mean, I'm just going to tell you as library director, I do think that would end up being problematic because I think that will be the focus. And I'm not saying that's not a primary factor. I'm saying that shouldn't be the first thing we're looking at as we're going in. It should be to see how the community is going to grow and then how the library would meet the needs of our users. But sorry, Susan, you've had your hand up for a long time and I'm responding. So,
Well, Susan, is yours related to the library or something totally different?
It's close. You guys can finish this piece of it, but then I do have something to add on it's another clarification to what Tim's asking.
So what I would propose we do is, look, I found this firm to be incredibly flexible working with us last time. They worked with us to get us to where we needed to be for the community to adequately react and give us feedback. What I would suggest is we make sure that everyone's comfortable that they're going to help us frame approximately how many square feet the library needs, right? They're going to be listening to what the library is gathering from their data up to a certain point. and we're gonna know a range. It's somewhere 18, 20, 22, right? Like we'll have a ballpark. And guess what? We're also gonna know the average cost of public construction. And I think between us and them, we can come up with estimates if we think it's prudent. I think that then gives Ryan and Janet an option, right, of how far down that we go based on what they're learning about it. But it also doesn't hamper our progress to start to make decisions, which I think what you're trying to get at, Tim, right? Is you don't want to be sitting here a year half from now and we're still at square one.
Yeah, what I'm also going to say, like in this words, I don't want to spend the amount of money that's on this estimate as a taxpayer in town, regardless if it's approved or not, and then not have some kind of number that we can comfortably hang our hat on and say, this agency that we hired to be a professional opinion said that this is the rough cost of what this new construction type thing would be. So we can compare the reuse option, which theoretically should be the cheaper option from a town standpoint. And I mean, not talking specifically, Ryan, like the library as it is now. I'm saying like maybe like within Finn or something, and have just real numbers to compare to that we're not hand waving and making up. Like, you know, we're gonna.
I think you're getting that, and I don't think it's going to hamper anything Ryan and Janet are going to do. I just think it's an iterative process of how you get from point A to point B, which I think is going to be different than recreation in the senior center, which I think are not in this like separate process going on. They're like, this is their process. I really do think you're going to get that, because otherwise, yeah, I agree with you. We're wasting our money.
Right.
Jen, let me go to Susan because she said she had a somewhat related topic.
Yeah, and maybe Janet, do you want to respond to this conversation? That's totally fine. I can still wait
Well,
another.
I mean, I can see the value in comparing apples to apples. Here's what a new senior center would cost. Here's what a new library would cost, whatever. But I don't think a brand new library ground up is on the table. That's not at all in the plans, right, Ryan? I mean, it's so.
I would agree. I
I think
think
it's
we're
kind of a
looking
scare
at-
tactic,
Yeah.
or might be one to people looking at how much building costs we're looking at. You know, we're not putting up 3 schools, we're not putting up 3 buildings. Here are the kind of things. And if we start saying, here's what a brand new library would cost, that could be, you know, that's concerning to people.
So if I can reply to that from my perspective, at least, I would see that number. And then once I see the rest of the options that come forward through the rest of the process you guys are going through at the library, and the rest of what we're going to go through going down the line, I would assume that these numbers are just the most expensive options on a ground up build. At least that would be my gut reaction to what that number should be. And then from there, reuse of a building, which should be cheaper. So that's the way that I would think about it. And I would hope that that's the way it comes to fruition. And that's why I would be interested in seeing the numbers today.
I think
The
sometimes a
NBLC
number can
says-
get out there and people won't let it go. And
The MBLC
I
said that adding space on an existing building and then trying to integrate that space is always more expensive than building a new building from the ground up. And that is, I think, kind of, I see some of you shaking your head. I know this is not news to other people. So the idea, I think if you start looking at a price comparison between what it's going to cost to build a new library, where we don't know where that would even be, versus renovating our existing building. I mean, right now I can tell you renovating the existing building is going to be more expensive, but that might be the option that we think is the best way to move forward. And I can't speak for the board or for a future library building committee. There's a lot of data we're going to collect over the next year, and then that determination is going to be made. But I think a focus on renovating the existing facility is kind of the priority right now.
Go ahead, Susan.
So my question, Jason, you were kind of answering it, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the first part with renovating Finn, are we looking at that, or maybe it's irrelevant to separate it out with the entire library being part of Finn versus the entire library not being part of Finn and having either just a little piece of it or not being included at all, are those prices going to look similarly, or do we need to ask them to break that out?
I think part of the Finn option is they're gonna run through scenarios. They're gonna say,
Okay.
all right, the senior center is gonna occupy X amount of square space. Recreation's gonna occupy Y amount of square feet. And then the library, there's this amount left. We think it could work this way,
Okay.
but then that's where Ryan and the team are gonna come back and say, well, operationally, it doesn't work that way. But, you know, we're interested in, right, like going back to Ryan's annex point, right? So I think that you move, that's where our feedback is gonna be relevant, right? Is they're gonna bring us options, right? And each stakeholder group is gonna have to say, yeah, that's not enough space for us, or that's too much space for us dedicated to this certain area. I don't think anyone's gonna say that. I just foreshadowing. But I think you're gonna, I mean, I think everyone's making really good points. I just think you're gonna have the data to at least know what's going on at Finn, what's going on, how much square feet the library approximately needs, plus or minus a couple thousand square feet. Because when you go into design, which would be the next phase, that would be what Ryan goes out for funding next year on, or anything else, the numbers go up and down during that process as you start to, so these are gonna be rough numbers, but yeah, I think we all know if you start to do new, plus new school, that number is going to be some number that doesn't matter what your wealth factor is, you're not going to be comfortable with it, right? So I think that's how we try to piece this together too. Go ahead, Bill.
What are the chances of even Finn being available? It seems to me like that would not be a school that's even available for our needs as a city
Well,
center or anything. And are we spending a lot of money on something that's putting the cart before the horse? If there's not even a chance the Finn school is going to be available, why are we spending a lot of money to figure out if this?
because there's a very likely chance. The current school administration strongly believes in consolidation. Most, not all, community feedback thinks that the schools should be consolidated. The MSBA has told us that closing Woodward is not going to lead to the most match of any sort of construction. And the current school administration is the one that put it on the table. Right.
So they did say that they might.
Yeah, and we've
That
told
direction.
the state agency that as well. And I'll tell you, the reaction to that versus Woodward was very different in a positive way, which is why we took a tour. I wouldn't have wasted anyone's time if I didn't think it was feasible. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not. But it's certainly on the table and part of the discussion if they want to consolidate schools. If they choose not to consolidate schools, then yeah, it's not on the table.
Yeah,
If I may, Jason, I'm just gonna say, as part of sort of the pre-work before doing all of this, because a library renovation has kind of been under discussion for a number of years, kind of in the background, is I did like talk with the assessor and we looked at parcels that might be available for some type of construction. And I mean, part of the reason we're talking about repurposing existing buildings or renovating existing buildings is because, to be blunt, there's not a lot of places in Southborough to go. And I don't think a lot of the new community center, a new senior center, or a new library being on Route 9 is really something a lot of people are going to be enthusiastic about. And that is really, I think, one of the only places that we could build something, to be blunt. But feel free to correct me, Jason. That's just with me looking into the places where it could go. It's limited.
Yeah, unless you buy another parcel of land that we don't own currently.
That actually leads me to another one of my questions is, are we looking at any point of, or having them do a cost assessment for if we did a senior center from the ground up, completely new, or sorry, not the community center, completely new construction. I know that kind of goes along with what we were talking about last time with private-public partnership and looking at what Wellesley did. I know we have to have more of a conversation on that, but is that in there at all? Looking at consider if we did find the land for it, if what it would cost to do a community center that can hold all of these pieces.
Yes, because I think you get there by adding the three options together in some way, shape, or form.
We're
I-
missing the third option.
What'd you say?
We're still missing that third option without doing some napkin math.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Tim. I guess I'm a little confused what the options are. So option one,
Mm-hmm.
they're not numbered on here, but the first one, space allocation at the existing Finn Elementary School. For the 3 spaces. So that's one option. And then it seems like senior center high level costs and recreation center high level costs, that's the same option, right? That would be option 2 if they all get one new construction site each. Is that what you're saying, Tim? And then option 3 might be a brand new construction of an entire community center altogether.
Well, so this is where we have to be careful with our terminology. So option 1 is repurposing Finn to fit as much of the needs here as possible, right?
Yep.
Option 2 is just to create a senior center. Option 3 is just to create a recreation center. And the reason I at least was okay with the language that they proposed for now, and I have a way of, I think, trying to hopefully mend these together, is because of the feedback that Janet shared. Right? That's not right. Like, it's recent feedback, but I don't know that anyone was surprised by some of the feedback there, especially probably Bill, and I see Bill and Pam shaking their heads a little bit. So what I would propose, right? But if the seniors in recreation somehow agree to come together as a community center with their needs, we could ask DRA to add that in as an option within this package and call it option
Yes.
4, right? And say, if we combine the needs of the senior center and recreation, in with all due respect, I think, to our library colleagues, I'm not sure, you tell me if I'm wrong, that you would want to be included in that. I would think that if we're building a brand new community center from scratch, I'm not sure you build a library as part of that, but you tell me if you want. But I think we just add that as an option 4, and they would already have the data to do it. So I don't think they should be asking us for any more money. Anyway, I think clarify that. Am I making sense?
Mhm.
Yes, no, that's exactly what I was wanting. That I agree that I understand now the difference between 2 and 3. Thank you for explaining those. I kind of thought like if you did one, you'd have to do the other as well, but no, you're
Yeah.
right. You don't have to. But no, yes, I like the idea of that option 4 if everyone else likes that as well.
Tim, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, from just the contract type standpoint, like I would feel much better about it being in writing, not just saying that we can get there as we move forward. So I'd feel much better about having the option for the consolidated building, not repurposing a school with the costs as part of this agreement up front.
Only
versus-
with recreation and senior, or do we need to?
I mean, I'm going to stand firm on where I stand from a dollar standpoint. I understand that it's not the favorable opinion to some of us, but I want to see the library included from a ground up. So from my personal standpoint, I would want to see the senior center, high level costs, no parcel of land, recreation and library, all fresh builds, independent in their own locations, brand new today, rough costs. And then I'd like to see one of them all on the same roof getting shared utilities and whatnot. And hopefully that would be less money than independent builds. And then we would have all the data in front of us today on what FINRA use would be, on what independent facilities would be for each department or each branch, and then what a consolidated building would be on all those things. That's what I would like to see.
I don't understand what the purpose would be of including the library in that. I'm just stuck.
My purpose is, at the end of the day, I understand that there's grants, there's ways to get some of these things paid for. And I would hope that we could pursue things the most cost-effective way for a taxpayer within town. But I would like to see it because of purely what would it cost to get a brand new facility, fully ADA compliant, as a tax number, because our taxes keep getting affected by things. For me, I like to see all that so I can have a full understanding of what it would be. I understand secondarily things would get really complicated. We'd say, okay, well, what would a buildable parcel today cost? Now we might see a number for that particular thing, add the parcel to it, and then it's just completely unreasonable. But for me, it's black and white, and it's easy for me to see. It's easy for me to say, hey, that doesn't make any sense. And it's a good solid ground that you can then make arguments, debates, whatever we need to justify why we decide what we decide as everything moves forward. That's why I want to see it. And it's all today, it's all even, it's the same firm, it's the same recommendation where we get apples to apples.
It's not.
Doesn't
speaking
that
to me.
change the scope of the proposal, Jason?
I think it would. I mean, I understand exactly what Tim is saying. I think if I'm reading at least the discussion here, everyone's comfortable that we should be adding a fourth bullet point here that is a true community center that includes at least senior center and recreation if they were to share a roof on a new parcel of land. I think the question now is on the library, whether that would be part of any possible project or not. Did I properly
Yeah.
summarize where I think people are potentially?
I cut you off, Janet. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to speak over you.
No, I think, I mean, maybe I'm thinking too much inside a box, but I can't see the entire library being part of another building. I could see a portion, I could see some functions or some use of space, but not the entire function. But I just can't picture it.
Janet and Ryan, does that grant allow for the library to be part of another, like a community center, or would it be separate?
So yes, Nikki, there is ways to get grant funding in order to be part of a shared facility, but there are kind of stipulations on what then needs to happen as far as the library space. So like one of the things is the library space has to have its own bathrooms. The library space has to have independent climate control. So like things like that, there's kind of, I don't have a full list, but it's almost like it has to function as a separate facility within the community center. But again, if it is built from the ground up, those criteria could be met because we're going through the process of figuring out what that would mean, Does that make sense? Was that helpful?
Yeah, so I agree with Jason's idea of having DRA come up with sort of a general, this is how much a library costs number that we can use for just comparison purposes. But I think if we go back and say, we want this community center to include the library 100%, I understand that it's easier to compare apple to apples, like Janet was saying, but it's a false number almost because the chances of it happening are so slim that at least it seems like they're so slim given the grant process and what people want, that I almost think it would take up more of our time to go forward with that idea and then have to back out of it later on. So
Well-
we should just
Right.
go with general number and not change the proposal around.
Just so we're talking rough numbers, we start adding at least what the space needs study told us last time. We take what recreation was looking for, council on aging and library. We're like approximate, is a very approximate number. We're looking at 60,000 square feet in one building. Do you know the size of a site we would have to do that? Not to mention public construction cost is, depending on what number you look at, anywhere between $700 and $1,000 per square feet right now.
I'm also
It's-
just thinking of the complexity of managing 3 different functions in one spot and the constant bickering over.
Right, versus if you were to reuse something.
Yeah.
You everyone's is gonna have to make some sacrifice, but they're gonna get what they're looking for.
Mhm.
Like, and,
Maybe there's a
Minecraft-
reason why there's not a lot of standalone, that there's a lot of standalone facilities in other communities, right? Because something of this magnitude to meet all the space needs of all the different groups ends up becoming pretty massive.
Nikki, is your hand still up or is that from last time? You're on mute. I see your
You're on
mouth moving.
That's from last time. Sorry.
Right, thank you. Go ahead, Pam.
If you were to put out there an option of a new build, including the library, senior center, rec, I mean, is there any way to just get like a real ballpark number without doing a lot of work? I mean, just a rough number, basically, if you put that number out there, it's gonna be huge. And maybe it has to be put out there so people see it and they say, okay, that's too much money. I mean, is that a reason to put that on the list as opposed to, Finn, which is already there and you need to do a renovation, like put that at, that's the real kind of combination option financially that makes more sense if you were to put all of us together, or at least 2 groups together with some other like youth and family services and things like that in Finn. But are people going to be asking for that number? I mean, I guess that's my question. Do you need to put a big number out there just to answer their questions?
Well, I also know what putting a number out there does, having lived through it in the community before.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we were bickering over, Janet can keep me honest, I think we were bickering over $2 million on public safety. That, right, it ended up, at the end of the day, we got to that number in actuality, but we got funding for more to give us some room. So,
But it was very contentious.
right,
it
and
caused-
it was,
it
yeah,
Kind of the
Cause more
nicest way you could
problems.
say it.
So it
Uh,
caused more problems than it was worth doing? Is that kind of what happened?
once,
or-
once a number was out there, it was painful. I'm just
Okay.
gonna be very honest.
Okay.
If people didn't agree with that number, people agreed with
Okay.
it, then we were fine. But I think I have a proposal here that's hopefully gonna, I would suggest that we take the proposal as is and ask DRA to make 2 amendments for it. And assume that they're not gonna change the bottom line cost. The first would be to give us a 4th option to take the space needs of the library and just tell us approximately how much a new build would be based on those assumptions. And we put in big bold print, further analysis needs to be done. Ryan and Janet, you can react to that in a second. The second would be that they take a average efficiency of what they see when they consolidate 3 different things into one building. And just give us an average of, if you took 3 independent 20,000 square foot buildings, again, I'm making that up, but it's roughly where we're at. And you put it all into under one roof, which is where Tim's going. Do you shrink the building by 6,000 square feet? Do you shrink it by 10,000 square feet? And then we just multiply that by the average cost of public construction, subject to some sort of, we'll work with them on an inflationary number, which applies to everything they've already agreed to do. Would that, so Tim, let me ask you first, would that achieve what you're looking to achieve?
Yes, you cover the library high level base number, some gut reaction, and that consolidation number. Yes, that would make me happy.
Okay. Janet, Ryan, do you have a adverse reaction to that from a library perspective?
No.
Okay. I will
I just
also,
want to, I'm hoping in this whole process, we never hear the word Taj Mahal, which is what other things get labeled in this town, so.
yes.
hmm.
By the way, that Taj Mahal is known in the public safety world as the deal of the century. It's what most people call it these days.
Okay.
I think this discussion has been valuable to have.
Absolutely.
I was remembering the public safety conversations, and I remember we had an open forum at the library where people had feedback, and I remember, Jason, putting that number out there. So it's just, once the numbers get put out, they can't be unput out, and that's, people form opinions based on that right away without any other data.
And I would think that through the feedback sessions, Janet and Ryan are going to have individual conversations with the designer, and we'll be able to kind of say, this is going too far or not, and be able to come back to the committee and say, I think we need to do more, do less, etc., before like a presentation's made, right? And you can think about the optics of that before it actually comes forward.
I'm not interested in a Taj Mahal library, just for the record.
Nikki, is that still the same hand?
You're on
No,
mute.
You put it back up, or
No, I didn't touch it.
oh, I'm gonna lower it then.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't ignoring you.
No.
Okay. Is there any further discussion we want to have before I put a motion on the table? All right, so I will move that the committee authorize the chair to go back to DRA and add 2 clarifying scope items. 1, addition of a new build to the library using the average space needs that they agreed to as part of the analysis. And 2, using rough estimates of building efficiency, what a combined of options 2, 3, and 4 could look like from a high level cost, subject to the cost not changing.
Second.
Okay. Obviously, I'll repeat what I said earlier. Should DRA accept that, it needs to go to the select board. They meet Tuesday night, and hopefully we would be good to move forward from there. And then we'll kind of be in a holding pattern until they can start to do their work in the summer. Any further discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote. Susan?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes,
Nikki?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Okay, good discussion. That is exactly why this committee is made up the way it is. All right, I don't see any public comment here. Is there any other business anyone wants to conduct this evening?
We were going to try, I haven't done anything to follow up on this. I don't know if anybody else to determine what the, what the determination is on the library, whether it can be used for other things.
Mark
You
is,
call it up?
I talked to him yesterday in another matter, gently nudged him. When he has, my understanding is town council has been very difficult because they're dealing with everyone else's town meetings now.
Mhm.
It's been very difficult to get kind of the final sign off on that. I would suggest once he has that, that would be a reason to meet while we wait for DRA to start up. And obviously would defer to you and Ryan of whether that's a joint meeting with the library board of trustees as well. Or whether you bring it back and you can all determine that once we have something to discuss. But
Mhm.
yes, I wish I had more details, but I don't. I do have a copy of the deed if anyone wants it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there calligraphy?
I mean,
Almost,
it's pretty impressive.
almost.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
probably not the Book of Kells, but
I will write a note to send that to the group.
Thank you.
All right. So any other business for tonight?
Do we want to talk about what our next one is, or we've just decided to leave it up in the air until we determine?
Once I get
More
library
info.
information, would be another reason to meet. And obviously, if I'm unsuccessful with what we just voted on, we may need to meet. But just
So
fingers
rough-
crossed.
Roughly a month from now.
You want to set a date roughly a month from now?
Well, I mean, we don't have to set a date. I just, my town email sometimes becomes the thing I don't check because it's a pain to remember. So I just want to know when I should check back in.
I
Um,
agree.
You can have that forwarded to your regular email.
I should do that.
Yeah.
My work email
Or
competes.
I am more than happy. Well, I strongly encourage the use of the town email for any replies to fully comply. Certain members of this committee have already asked me to include their personal email when I send things out. So if that's your preference, I'll always send it to your town email. But let me know, especially when I coordinate I mean, we all know what we communicate about. It's meeting dates and sending you packets. That's fine. It's already covered through any open meeting law request coming from my email. So if you have that preference, I will copy both and then you're fully covered.
I'll let you know. But right now, I'm
Okay.
good.
All right. Is there any other business? All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, it's been seconded. Roll call. Susan,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Nikki,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Have a great evening, everyone, and I guess stay tuned for Tuesday.
I think, Jason, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Separate. What are the deadlines for getting minutes done? Well,
So
Next
we have to,
14 days, right?
you have to have them available if there's a request. There's also a town bylaw that requires them, I believe, within 40 days
Oh.
of the meeting.
I know it's
Um,
less than that.
45.
again, they
We
don't-
were so close, Jason. It's 45 days.
All right.
I know that because we've been late.
Yeah, you get the notices, right? Yeah, I thought 40 was kind of odd when I said it. Thank you for keeping me honest. But you can give a draft too. So like I've had a committee that didn't meet for 9 months. And you can give a draft until the committee actually meets and approves them. And that satisfies it as well. You just have to do it as a draft.
So within, is it 2 weeks or is it 45 days? Tell me 2 weeks and I'll get it done.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
So the only, and
Go
also
ahead.
the only issue, Janet, I know it often takes, for some reason, it's taking a week or two for our videos to get up on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So that's sometimes why it takes a little longer, because if you're waiting for the YouTube video, if you don't see it up after 2 weeks, you can just email, and then they tend to post it.
I think they fixed that. They're doing it every
Oh, we
morning
did. Okay.
because YouTube doesn't work anymore or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're going in every morning and posting the meetings from the night before. So I
YouTube?
know I'll say that now and it won't be there tomorrow, but Jay and Hassan are great and I'm sure they'll take care of it.
But they're posting it on YouTube?
They post it to the town website and I think
Town
there's
website,
something new
okay.
now, so.
Great, thank you.
All right,
Glad I asked. Good night, everyone.
have a good
Good
evening.
night.